Picture this: a mother in Fresno clutching a child as sirens wail from yet another overdose call, the echo of despair bouncing off the concrete walls of the freeway. A line of tents stretches under the freeway, flickering with the glow of makeshift fires, the smoke curling into the night like silent screams. In the heart of California's farmland, people move like shadows, some staggering under the weight of what locals call the zombie drug. Their eyes hollow, their steps broken, their humanity stripped away in slow motion. And the question hangs in the air like a curse: why has this place never truly recovered? This is not Skid Row in Los Angeles, not the open-air drug market of Philadelphia's Kensington, not even San Francisco's Tenderloin. This is Fresno, a city once known as the agricultural pride of America, now becoming one of the overdose capitals of the West. A place where the crops still grow, but the people wither. The fentanyl crisis is not just about addiction. It is about a system cracking under pressure, about homelessness 2025. Turning into an encampment emergency, about families torn apart by a pill that looks harmless but can kill in a breath, a pill so small it fits. In a palm, yet so deadly it erases entire futures. And if you think this is only a Fresno story, you are wrong. This is America's mirror, a reflection too sharp to ignore. So let me ask you, if you lost your home tomorrow, where would you sleep? If your brother or sister fell into fentanyl, would you know how to save them? And if your city started to look like Fresno, would you believe it could ever come back?
Have safety, and the safety is going to start by removing the homeless people from the street.
We have also unmarked vehicles from certain organizations showing up on my private property and feeding these people when they're loitering on my property.
When fentanyl arrived in Fresno, not long ago, Fresno was defined by vineyards, orchards, and hardworking families who carried the reputation of feeding the nation a valley where sweat and soil were woven into the American dream. But beginning around the year 2013, a synthetic storm crept in quietly, like poison seeping into the groundwater. Fentanyl, a laboratory-made opioid up to 50 times stronger than heroin and as much as 100 times more powerful than morphine, began replacing older drugs on the streets with ruthless efficiency. It often appeared as counterfeit oxycodone, sometimes mixed with heroin or methamphetamine. And within only a few years, fentanyl had become the new currency of the underground market, traded as casually as candy, deadly as a loaded gun. It was cheaper to make, easier to smuggle, and more profitable for traffickers, a perfect storm for devastation. By 2025, one case shook Fresno to its core. A man named Horacio Tordesillas Urias Jr., known on the streets as the M30 King of Fresno, was sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. He had been producing and distributing tens of thousands of fake M30 fentanyl pills, along with methamphetamine and cocaine. That case did not just reveal a drug dealer, it revealed how far fentanyl had penetrated the valley's streets, showing that the poison was not just being imported, but manufactured embedded into the city's veins. But fentanyl is not just chemistry or crime. It is a stress test for an already fragile system. Treatment beds are too few. Rehabilitation programs cannot keep up, and testing kits for impurities are limited, leaving users playing Russian roulette with every pill. A city that once celebrated prosperity now finds itself on the front lines of a battle that small and medium-sized towns never thought they would face: a battlefield without borders. Yet even in this darkness, stories of resilience emerge like sparks in the night. Take Howie Piper, once an addict who lived closer to death than life, his body ravaged, his hope nearly extinguished. Today, he runs Fresno's branch of Fentanyl Anonymous, creating a community where no one is judged, where people can step out of despair into connection, where the broken find voices again. His work is a reminder that compassion and persistence can light a way forward even in the darkest alleyways of Fresno. And I want to ask you directly, do you believe a person who nearly lost everything to fentanyl can become a lifeline for others? Or do you think addiction forever defines someone's future? Portrait is a people amidst the crisis. Statistics can feel cold, but in Fresno they are heavy with human weight numbers that bleed into stories. In the winter of 2023, the federally required point-in-time count found 4,493 people experiencing homelessness across Fresno and nearby Madera. That was a 7% increase from the year before and nearly double the number reported just 5 years earlier, a surge so sharp it felt like a tidal wave swallowing the city. By 2024, Fresno County alone counted more than 4,300 homeless residents, with over 2,758 of them living outside in parks, under bridges, or in sprawling encampments that have become part of the city's daily landscape, transforming neighborhoods into open-air shelters of last resort. Behind these figures are faces and families. More than 800 of them were women, many single mothers balancing the impossible raising children without a safe place to sleep, preparing breakfast on a camp stove, or trying to save for a rental deposit while holding 2 part-time jobs. Their strength stretched to breaking point. 212 were veterans, men and women who once served in Iraq or Afghanistan. They came home carrying invisible wounds, trauma, depression, chronic illness, and without a strong safety net, many slipped into the streets. Some eventually found veteran-specific programs offering housing and counseling, but far too many did not, becoming soldiers abandoned on their own soil. And then there are the children. They carry old backpacks to school from the backseat of a car that doubles as their bedroom. They whisper secrets under blankets in parking lots. They draw pictures of houses with yards even though they have never lived in one. They are the quietest reminder that homelessness is not just about tents and sidewalks. It is about stolen childhoods, futures interrupted before they ever begin. But in Fresno, alongside the harsh reality, small acts of humanity persist. A neighbor dropping off a bag of groceries, a volunteer handing out blankets in the cold, a free health clinic offering care without questions. These gestures may not solve the crisis, but they keep the pulse of community alive, proving that kindness can survive even in scarcity. So let me ask you, when you hear the word homeless, who do you picture first? A man with a sign, or a child who still dreams of a bedroom of their own? The price Fresno pays. Hospitals in Fresno have become emergency battlefields. Overdose calls linked to fentanyl have multiplied, pushing emergency rooms beyond capacity, turning hallways into makeshift triage zones. According to medical research, people experiencing homelessness are hospitalized for opioid-related health crises at rates over 10%, compared with less than 2% among low-income but housed populations. That gap tells us 2 things. The homeless are more vulnerable, and the system is more overwhelmed than ever, running on fumes. And as hospitals strain, the ripple spreads. Downtown business owners say they have seen customer traffic drop. They face rising maintenance costs, graffiti break-ins, and the constant unease of operating next to encampments. Some shops have closed. Others consider leaving the city center as their dreams shuttered behind boarded windows. This is not just about one business shutting its doors. It is a signal when public health collapses, the local economy bleeds with it. Fresno, a place that once celebrated abundance, now finds its civic heart under pressure from a crisis. It did not choose a storm it cannot yet control. Lessons from Sacramento and Bakersfield. To understand Fresno's struggle, it helps to step back and compare it with 2 other California cities that face similar challenges, Sacramento and Bakersfield. Sacramento, the state's capital, once had rows of tents circling its downtown blocks. Instead of focusing only on enforcement or temporary shelter, the city invested in both housing and rehabilitation, at the same time refusing to pick one over the other. One of their most talked about initiatives, the Safe Ground program, not only created beds, but also wrapped those beds in services, medical care counseling, and job search help right at the shelter site. By linking police, social workers, and nonprofits in one chain of response, Sacramento lowered the percentage of people who cycled back into homelessness, breaking the loop one person at a time. Bakersfield, another city rooted in farming and oil, chose a slightly different formula. They embraced housing first, but with accountability, residents were placed directly into permanent housing, and in return they had to agree to participate in treatment or rehabilitation. At the same time, Bakersfield formed rapid response teams with police, paramedics, and therapists. Every outreach led to a direct connection to services, no waiting lists, no dead ends, no excuses. And then there is Fresno, standing somewhere in the middle. Fresno has strengths: faith communities, a large network of volunteers, and a location that makes it a hub for resources. But its system is fragmented. Temporary shelters are too few. Rehab beds are in short supply. Agencies often work side by side instead of hand in hand, their efforts overlapping but not uniting. The result, encampments get cleared one week only to reappear the next, like ghosts returning. The question becomes clear: what if Fresno combined Sacramento's persistence with Bakersfield's decisiveness? Could it finally break the cycle? And here's where I ask you, the listener. If you were designing a plan for Fresno, would you choose compassion without conditions or support that comes with responsibility? Which one feels more sustainable to you? Breaking the myth. Homelessness is a choice. Mourning in Fresno can feel like two parallel worlds. One group heads to work holding coffee cups, while just a few blocks away, others wake up cold on the pavement or in the front seat of a car that has doubled as a bedroom. These lives are separated not by distance but by opportunity, a gulf invisible but immense. Many still say if people really wanted to, they could just get off the street. But the story of Cristina Montalvo, a single mother in Fresno, proves how false that assumption can be. Back in the year 2018, Cristina was pregnant and without a home. Her children had to stay with relatives while she searched for any help she could find, knocking on doors that never opened. "I felt like I didn't know where to go," she told a local radio station. That was not a choice. It was a cornered reality survival stripped of dignity. Her turning point came when an emergency program placed her in an apartment in southeast Fresno. At first, she feared the new neighborhood, but soon she discovered people who cared. A roof gave her stability. She reunited with her kids, and she began to imagine a future again. "Now, I don't have to be on guard all the time like before," she said, her voice trembling with relief. Cristina is not alone. According to the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, more than 68% of the homeless population had requested housing within the past 12 months but were turned away. Some were told to wait, others were blocked by red tape. In other words, they tried. The system simply failed to open the door, a bureaucracy that became a barrier. And here's the financial reality: the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Fresno has climbed above $1,400 per month. Compare that to a minimum wage of $16 per hour, and the math is brutal, a calculation that breaks lives. One illness, one lost paycheck, one broken car, and families fall straight into homelessness. So when people dismiss it as their choice, we must pause and ask, would you call it a choice if the only options left were the sidewalk, a car, or a tent? Think about your own life for a moment. What would happen if you lost your job tomorrow? How many months of rent could you cover before falling behind? Building a real way out? So what does hope look like for Fresno? The answer is not in clearing tents or issuing citations. Those tactics may clean a block for a week, but they do not change lives. They only scatter the problem. A real solution must begin with housing, stable, safe, reliable shelter, and extend into the deeper causes: addiction, trauma, and lack of opportunity. The Housing First model has shown success across the country. The logic is simple: give someone a home before asking them to get sober, find work, or attend counseling. Without the constant fear of where to sleep, people finally have the space to heal, the breathing room to rebuild. But in Fresno, housing alone will not be enough. The city has fewer than 30 detox beds for the entire county, a number far smaller than the need, a number that translates to lives lost while waiting. Alongside housing, Fresno must expand medical and psychological services addressing trauma, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Equally important is vocational training, giving people the tools not just to survive, but to thrive, to write resumes instead of police reports. A pilot program here has already proven the model works. 50 individuals were moved from camps into small apartments, supported daily by medical staff, counselors, and caseworkers. Within 6 months, many had maintained sobriety, secured part-time jobs, and begun reconnecting with their families. The victory was not just 50 lives. It was proof that when you hand someone a key, you also hand them back a future, a chance to step out of the shadows. So, let me ask you, if you were offered a second chance tomorrow, what would you do first? Find work, rebuild family ties, or simply rest in the safety of your own room? Fresno's alarm bell for America. Fresno is not just Fresno, it is a warning. Look closely at its streets, tents under freeways, small businesses closing early, ambulances lined up outside hospitals, and you may be looking at the future of many American cities, a chilling preview. Why? Because the recipe for crisis is the same everywhere. Housing prices rising faster than wages, mental health services stretched thin, and stigma that silences empathy. Put those ingredients together and the outcome is predictable: encampments, overdoses, and families fractured, a slow-motion collapse of the American promise. The lesson is urgent. Prevention is always less costly than repair. Investing in affordable housing before rents explode is cheaper than funding endless cleanups. Expanding rehab and mental health care is more humane than waiting for overdoses. And replacing stigma with empathy opens the door to actual solutions, because judgment never saved a life. And here's what Fresno also proves: community matters. Volunteers cooking hot meals, doctors in mobile vans saving lives, churches offering safe shelter. These are not side notes. They are the heartbeat that keeps hope alive, while systems struggle to catch up. If Fresno is a ticking clock, its sound is echoing nationwide. The choice is ours. Ignore the ticking until it explodes, or listen and act before it is too late. Ask yourself this in 20 years. When your children or grandchildren ask what you did during America's homelessness crisis, what will you say? Fresno has shown us something that is both painful and instructive: when high rents, limited social services, and a deadly drug like fentanyl collide, an entire community can be shaken to its core, its spirit frayed. But this does not have to be a story of despair. Every policy that is bold enough, every volunteer who refuses to give up, every neighbor who chooses compassion instead of judgment, together, these can rebuild the foundation of trust and safety brick by brick. What happens in Fresno could happen anywhere, and that means the responsibility is shared by all of us. Here at Bear City 24, we believe stories like this should not just inform but inspire action. If this touched you, let it be a reason to look at your own community with new eyes, to see what might be slipping through the cracks. Because Fresno's story is not the end. It is a warning, and it is also an invitation to act, to care, and to build a future where streets are no longer the only shelter. People have a future where survival is no longer the measure of success, but the beginning of something greater.